ready to go. Look at this shit. Man, goodness. I got 3 different cups. What do you got? Just a coffee?
Judge a man by the inventory of his cups.
I do generally tend to ingest a lot of fluids. However, this morning I left the shop at like 9. I just got back like right before you got here, and it's 1:30. And I hadn't eaten or drank anything. I was dying, so I've been sucking down water and got me a water glass right here. I got me a Jocko Go Black Cherry Vanilla. This is one of my faves. It's super good. And then I've got my homemade cold brew in Mother Stanley here, so I'm just ready to rock Doc.
How's the homemade cold brew coming?
Dude, I'm getting really good at it.
Yeah.
You haven't tried it yet, have you?
No, I want to try it.
Yeah,
you got to put that on the docket for sure.
Yeah, and it honestly, it was...
I'll review it on the next podcast.
There you go. We should do that. Do that. Now, it started with... my girlfriend drinks a ton of cold brew, and the amount of money she was spending on a month, I was like, there's got to be a way better way to do this. So I started making it myself. And I make like 3 gallons or 4 gallons at a time. It lasts a while. So, no faux pas here.
And the way cold brew works is it's basically like...
Well, it drops the acidity out of the coffee.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm so used to drinking coffee, which, personal confession time, my milligram caffeine intake's probably a little high for a normal human per day. I probably drink 3 cups of coffee in the morning to like 10, 11, maybe 4, depending on the day and how much I'm running. And then I'll have another cold brew after. And the cold brew gives you the same effect, if not a greater effect, without any of the sharp acidity or whatnot that you typically get from coffee.
It's really good.
And I could see myself not brewing coffee anymore because I like it better. And I even like it in the morning better. But I'm just so programmed to brew out a hot cup of coffee and sip on it. You know, I don't know. But man, it's really good. And if you grow it, if you brew it in like the commercial people would, it looks like a 5-gallon bucket with a little spigot on the bottom of it. And it ends up making about 3 gallons-ish, something like that, from a 3-pound bag of coffee. So it's not terribly expensive compared to you pay like $5-6 for a cup of cold brew.
And you just pour it over ice. Is that what you do?
You actually just pour it over cold water. You like kind of almost spray it because the opening of it's like that big around, and it's like that thick of coffee grounds, right? And you just soak. And then at one point you re-stir it to make sure the stuff that's on the top gets down to the bottom, and it'll eventually make a crust over the top of it that's all just the dried portion of it. And then you let it sit for like 2 days, and then you dispense it out the bottom into other containers and throw away the coffee filter, rinse it out, and use it again.
But from that point, when you're pouring it out to drink it, do you pour it over ice, or what do you do with it?
Yeah, I just pour it over ice, but that ends up being a concentrate.
That's what I was going to say. Concentrate was the word I was looking for earlier.
Yeah, so this has cold brew in it, and this is like half, well, if you don't count the ice that's in it, this is half cold brew, half water.
Yeah.
And dilutes it down to...
So 3 gallons of cold brew concentrate is more like 6 gallons.
It's like 6 gallons. Yeah, so, and man, it's good. I used to really love iced tea in the summer, sun brewed iced tea and whatnot. And I still do, but man, I really like the cold brew, period. It's good stuff. And I put nothing in it. You can put, creamer or whatever in it if you want, but the traditionally the creamer is there to offset the acidity. Well, there isn't any acidity when you do it in cold brew. So it just takes a while. You got to be prepared, but yeah.
So I don't drink too often anymore, but iced tea reminds me of college. Where I went to college, Big Rapids, Michigan, the Muskegon River flows through it. And in the summertime, that's what college kids do. They float the river, they drink beer and drink stuff. And once you're a veteran at the game or whatever, you realize I don't want to bring 6 beers because then I got 6 cans. So you just do like a shaker bottle with your favorite mixie.
Yeah, little Long Island iced tea for you.
And I would do a shaker bottle heavy with ice, and then iced tea vodka. Have you ever had iced tea vodka?
No, I've not.
It's really good.
Sounds like trouble.
Yeah, it's very troubly. But iced tea vodka, fill that up quite a bit actually, and then just put a little bit of like sugar-free lemonade on top. And it was like the smoothest Arnold Palmer type
Really?
drink, very dangerous. But we're on a hot summer's day today, and
That sounds really good right now.
it's very good, yeah. And we're at like the stage of a Washington summer where the sun comes out and it doesn't really leave.
Well, we get these hot spells every once in a while, and it seems like to me it's once a year.
Yeah.
Like we'll have a weird frame of time. I'm trying to get
I think
the
it's once
the
a year
exact
because
temperature right
what
now.
I track is when it gets so warm at night that I can't open the windows.
Yeah,
And it's only like there'll be like 5 or 10 days of summer it does that.
yeah, and honestly, I've still opened them at night, but it is a little cooler in this valley that I live in.
It is a little bit, yeah.
It's 5 or 10.
You get a little
degrees cooler.
microclimate here.
But this weather report says 101 today, and my truck, I don't know if it's right or not, but I was driving to Hayden yesterday to see my grandma and grandpa, and it was 105 or 106 on my dash. So I think it was hotter yesterday. Pretty sure.
Yeah.
But, those things can always have a variance. But yeah, we don't see triple digits very often here.
No.
And rarely do we have nights that are not below 70.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've had one yet that wasn't below 70 every
Yeah.
night we've had thus far. And it looks like it's going back down.
Now,
according to
speaking of
this.
microclimates, one thing that's kind of unique to Washington in general, or even Eastern Washington, is we do have a lot of microclimates. And last year, when I was coming back from Nevada, which was the middle of August, I was doing it through the night, and I was driving through the Tri-Cities at midnight. And at midnight, it's the first time I've ever seen my truck start to overheat. At midnight, it was like 101 or 102 degrees in the Tri-Cities, which I couldn't believe because I've never seen heat like that at night.
That's wild, yeah.
So for the people that live down there, man, they're soldiers. Like,
I think they're in that river a lot.
yeah,
Because that's like
they're
their
soldiers.
That's their sport or their hobby down there. is
I do
go
have an archery
to the river.
observation or question, I guess. So I was watching some of my TAC footage, and we shot with some pretty good shooters at TAC, and even good shooters every once in a while, you could watch the bow torque differently out of their hand. Now, I guess we should talk about what's torque.
Torque is the lateral movement of your grip, right? So
Yeah.
if you don't put your hand directly behind the grip the same way, little left, little right, causes the bow to roll a little left or a little right.
Yeah, so when you watch the bow come out of a person's hand, you could watch it twist left or twist right.
Yeah, and traditionally what's occurring there is the pin and the rest are moving from each other, causing you to point in a different spot, which is no bueno. But yeah, you'll find instances where somebody slightly grips their bow a little different, and you watch the bow roll out of their hand. I caught myself doing that, and I think that's a commonplace thing when you start really fucking with the terrain.
Yeah,
When your footing's off and everything else is off, it's like your hand doesn't go into the bow the same way.
Would it ever be advantageous to torque into the hill?
Deliberately?
Yeah.
I've never tried that. I don't know if that would be beneficial or not.
Yeah. The first time
Yeah, it's like Tiger Woods shit right there.
the first time I heard Bodie talk about drawing his bow into the hillside, Dan and myself and Bodie and Joel, we all shot with a big group out on the range and made a video out of it. And this is like my first exposure time hanging out with Bodie. And as we were shooting with him, we were asking him several questions. And one of the questions for Bodie was, Bodie, do you ever, when you're shooting uphill or downhill, do you ever draw and then bend at the waist or into the hill? And Bodie said, no, I typically just set myself and then draw my bow because I feel like that kind of sets my body into that hill or my torque into that hill. Because that question came up again on a into the hill shot. Bodie, do you draw your cam into the hill? And he's like, yeah, I do draw my cam into the hill. I feel like that sets my torque into my hand. And I didn't watch the bow come out of his hand at this time, but I just wonder at that time, would that also be a way maybe now to offset, the lateral, if I'm doing a better job describing this, when you're shooting into a hillside, typically gravity is going to pull your top cam downhill, which is going to pull your bubble out of its center.
Well,
and
it's not gravity.
It's not.
No.
Or it's the hillside or whatever.
No, it's your footing.
Footing, yeah.
It's your footing because you can't get your feet flat.
Sure.
So your body wants to shift back. That's not
Yes.
gravity because gravity would hold your bow vertical.
Sure.
Because gravity's doing the same thing every
Yeah.
time. It's what your feet are doing.
It's the off-center hillside.
Yes.
Yeah. So naturally your cam wants to drift away. Naturally your bubble will drift out. So Bodie at that time talked about drawing his cam into the hill as a way to help him set torque into the hill. And it just got me thinking about it.
Yeah, but I don't think that's torque like this. I think that's leaning. And that's not hand torque. That's just the physical torque movement. I think that he's referring to. I'm pretty sure
it could be. Now all that to be said or led is one thing I've really admired about watching Levi Morgan shoot when I have watched him shoot is when his bow breaks away, it always breaks away like vertically and it looks pretty relaxed. Like you're not seeing it twist one direction or the other. And you can watch other good shooters shoot this way too, but it's just something I noticed from watching him shoot maybe many years ago. So to learn to do that better, would it make sense for a person to shoot it like an unweighted bow to get more feedback on torque?
I doubt it, because the lighter a bow is, you mean unweighted, like it's just going to do it less. The more weight you have on it, the more you'll feel the movement.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, no, just practice it is the best thing you can do. I wouldn't think backing your physical, weights off of your bow, your stabilizers, etc., to try to get a better feel for that. I don't think that would do that. You could try it.
No,
I don't think that would help.
And I can definitely think about some shooters like a Levi Morgan or a Bodie Turner when they shoot, their bow kind of breaks straight away. It doesn't twist left or twist right. But are there also good shooters that do consistently have some twist into their bow?
No,
when you think about
not
that?
On purpose that I know of.
Yeah.
I think there's some guys with some funky stances, but not physical torque, because that's really hard to duplicate. Like your stance can be duplicated and be different than the average guy's stance, but trying to physically apply lateral pressure into your grip the same every time, that's tough.
Yeah.
I doubt that. Maybe comment down below on which wacky target shooter has built-in torque into his grip every time he fires it and the whole thing rolls weird. But now you might see him come off a little weird based off of having a lot of side pressure on the bow, because it'll roll because of that. But that's deliberately trying to put bias in the bow, which forces the weight into your hand a little bit more, which helps you point. That's not like, I wouldn't call that built-in torque.
Now, all that said is, I think it was with my Bowtech where when I shot it, and I wasn't really paying a ton of attention to it, but I started to notice there was like a consistent little twist coming out of it. And fast forward to my Elite, and I didn't try to do anything differently. I just changed bows. But now my Elite falls so gracefully out of my hand. That must just be a grip style with how my grip leaned into it. But my Elite definitely breaks away vertically and nicely.
Could be. It is a longer bow and a longer riser.
Yeah. More forgiving that way, right?
It's more forgiving that way, and it's got a higher brace height.
Yeah.
So all three of those things are going to contribute to a cleaner follow-through, no matter what you do. And that's what you're really talking about, is how clean your follow-through is.
Yeah, it's seemingly got a lot better in the last couple months. But if you were a person, and let's say you were shooting your bow, and you consistently noticed, so if I'm looking in front of me and I'm shooting my bow twists, let's say it twists to the right. What would that mean from their grip? It would mean their grip is on the...
So the bow's rotating to the right. You're applying pressure from the outside of the riser.
The outside.
Going in. If you put your hand too far in, you're pulling the bow out.
Yeah.
So your pressure is too far to the left. And you can watch it when a bow goes off. Like, you can sit there and what really kind of clued me into it, and it's also a part where I realized what was going on when you're getting left to right tears through paper. It was part of like one of those aha moments for me, is when I drew back a bow and was getting a particular tear, and then I drew it back again, and I looked up at the cam, and my cam and my string weren't lined up. Like looking down the path of the string, like anchor your head into where you'd be looking through the peep, and then look up at the cam. I could see the side of the cam. Then I'd grab the bow and turn it to where it went away, and then shoot it through paper, and it shot clean. I'm like, oh, that's what's doing it. So the string groove, if that thing doesn't track straight, it forces the string that way or forces the string that way, which is changing the tear. So, and that's the same thing with torque. It's the same pivot. Like, if you want to know you're applying the same torque in your bow, you tune the bow to where your torque is good and you have the cam straight in line with the string. And so you can look at it. If you're applying torque left, you can look up and see that your cam and your string aren't lined up anymore. Or it's a very obvious visual.
Or another way is if you just had a camera behind that shooter, you would see that bow breaks away, and then it twists one direction or the other.
Sure, most of mine was I'm by myself and I have to figure this out stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, a camera will show it really quick.
And then if you are that person, if you're seeing significant twist, that's probably, hey, we got a grip issue.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And what if it's just a small amount of twist? Would that be potentially maybe, hey, something fixable with a stabilizer? Or would you first go to the grip, do you think?
I always try to go to the grip because I want someone to understand how it feels to make a bow go forward and not make it go left to right. Because you can feel it when you get it right. When you get it orientated into your hand right and in your grip right and the bow goes perfectly straight forward, you can feel it in your hand. And I want people to learn that reverb because then you can tell when you're gripping it wrong, right? If you aren't feeling for that, you wouldn't notice you were a little left or a little right. But another thing that does tune it into it is shooting through paper, right? So you can sit there and watch your tear change as you torque it left or right. So that helps teach people too, which is a big one.
Yeah. The first time I had any experience Nock tuning was just recently when we did this gold tip warrior arrow thing.
Yeah.
And
that was your first experience Nock tuning?
Yeah, it was. I've seen people do it. I just haven't done it myself. I've seen like Brian Atkinson do it. I've seen other shooters do it.
You've seen old B-Town spend 3 hours standing from my paper tuner and just burning holes through it.
But it was a pretty straightforward process. I'm sure I could have gotten more analytical and spent more time doing it. But in general, just getting it to shoot a good, clean hole through paper with maybe just a tiny, tiny bit of variance. It was pretty straightforward, and 10 out of the 12 arrows shot well, and 2 of them, the Nock turn fixed it. So I thought that was pretty interesting to observe. Yeah.
Yeah, Nock tuning's a real particular thing that gets a lot of discussion.
And I did it with fletchings on.
Yes, and that's where I was getting to is shooting or Nock tuning an arrow without your fletchings on it is kind of silly. And I'm sorry if I'm hurting people's feelings out there that preach and believe in it, but the reality of it is Nock tune that arrow, go fletch that arrow, and then shoot through paper again. It's not Nock tuned anymore. So there's really not a whole lot of point, and that's part of why a guy will fletch his fletchings all the same color, so he can turn it and not have to refletch the arrow to try to get that out of it. But to each his own. But Nock tuning does have a value; it truly does. But I believe it needs to be a fletched arrow that you're Nock tuning.
If you want to support the podcast, leave it a review, subscribe wherever you are listening. I also have a discount code with Josh's website. It's timc@podiumarcher.com. Josh has all your archery stuff and needs over there. And Jocko's stuff. We have discount code Josh and Tim. Help support what we do. I like their energy drinks, but I like their supplements too. I've used their protein and a couple other things, and I think it's great. So we'll go right back to the podcast. We appreciate you guys. Yeah, let's get back to it. Yeah. Now, 10 out of 12. Is that a ratio? Like, well, if a person went through 10 different sets of arrows and Nock tuned.
Well, didn't you cut these arrows and square these arrows first?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's normally where that variation can come from. Is if the back end of the arrow isn't square to when you seat the Nock into it, it'll react weird. So you're turning the Nock. So in essence, you're turning the pressure of where it's leaving when you fire it.
That makes sense.
So by cutting the arrows and squaring the arrows before you put Nocks into them or pull the Nocks out and put them back in, you would alleviate most of those oddities. You would have seen more if you hadn't done it that way.
Yeah. I was just a little curious on that.
Yeah, squared insert and squared Nock to the componentry is like more important than how straight the arrow is.
Yeah, and we talked about this on last week's podcast. You basically were like, gave us all the steps how to build arrows to the 9s. But one of them we went through was on a cheaper arrow or one that's made less to spec. I mean, it's particularly important that you take the steps to also square the back end of the arrow.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If you're buying an arrow that's $50 a dozen, I doubt they're cutting them very slow. Like if you watch me cut an arrow in the saw, I take 5, 6, 7 seconds to cut an arrow. Like I'm rolling around the arrow like 3, 4, 5 times before it cuts through it to make sure it's not cutting at an angle. Because you'll get that tiny little bit of angle, even if it's like 1/10 of a degree. And when you go to put a component in it, it cocks the component. Then all of a sudden you're like, hey, your component's not straight. I was like, no, your arrow squaring is off. That's where your problem runs into.
Yeah.
So and I still get baffled by what we used to do 20, 30 years ago, and we're relatively proficient with it versus today. It's amazing how sloppy things were.
Now, the very industrious silver Sharpie comes in handy again. In that
it's got a
process.
lot of applications, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Like, order yourself stop what you're doing, order yourself a 12-pack of silver Sharpies off Amazon.
Hey, we sell them on the website, numbnuts.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we sell silver Sharpies, and we sell them because
so Josh buys them from Amazon, marks them up.
Everyone should has. I buy them by the case, actually.
Yeah.
So you can buy them from Sharpie in a large quantity and get a pretty decent price on them. But yeah, I sell it. It's a tool. It's a tool we use a lot, and it has a lot of applications. So if you want to go buy one on Amazon, go ahead. But you could also support the channel, which, helps what we do.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's the catchphrase you like using?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So buy it on podiumarcher.com, you cheapskate.
Yeah. So the silver Sharpie comes in handy again with the squaring method, because all you got to do is put a little scratch of Sharpie on the end of the arrow.
Yep.
And then when you do twist it, it'll all twist itself off, which for me, I really like doing that because I always feel like when you're twisting it, you're not shaving much off. It just doesn't feel like that much arrows
You're
coming off.
shaving a lot off.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I used one, there was a squaring tool that went on a drill. It was scary.
Oh, I bet.
Because I was just like, oh, let's try this. And you're like, holy crap, I just took off a quarter of an inch of this arrow.
Yeah, that arrow's now 3 grains less or whatever.
It's amazing how fast a squaring tool is actually taking off material. And you only need to go like half a turn.
Yeah, it's not much.
It's probably faced and square. So, I mean, it's
depending on
it's
how
well worth the, depending on which one you buy,
Yeah.
the $40 to, $80. Because I know that OMP's got a built-in squaring tool in the spinner. Nice little plus. But yeah, a squaring tool, everyone should have one.
Now talk about
if you're building your arrows at all.
The other thing that you can do, which is once you've gotten your bow to a point at which you're like, hey, this thing is tuned, it's broadhead tuned, it's ready to hunt with. Talk about the silver Sharpie thing that you can do there.
Oh, to validate that it's not moving, not changing, that sort of thing. Yeah. So typically when I first started using a silver Sharpie, it was to draw all over my bow to make sure things weren't moving or changing. And this was a long time back when bows limb bolts were more forward. So it was actually more common to have a limb bolt kind of work itself loose.
Oh.
And I started by drawing a line on the top limb bolt and limb pocket straight down, and then straight up on the other one to where they were pointed at each other. So if a limb bolt unscrewed, you'd see it wasn't pointed at the other limb bolts anymore. And that's where the first thing that I ever put a silver Sharpie on was. And then I started drawing on, because arrow rests were just kind of bolted on the side and there was no integration. So you'd draw lines on the top and the bottom of where the bracket would sit. In case it rotated, you could kind of put it back. If you knew your rest was where you wanted it and weren't going to move, you'd draw a line across the vertical adjustment and the horizontal adjustment. So if it shifted, you knew where it was, could put it back. All those things are moot if you're using a micro adjust one, by the way. That's a huge benefit of micro adjust. I know people are like, well, I'm never going to move it like that. I'm never going to want to move it a finite. First of all, eventually you will if you understand what it does and why and how relevant and how important it is. But that outside of it, when you have a micro adjust rest or micro adjust sight, when things vibrate loose, they don't move. They're just loose. You tighten it back down, it didn't move. So your bow's still tuned. Your rest is still in the right position. Your bow's still sighted in. Those things are all good pluses. So that alleviates the need to mark those things. But if you're not, mark those things in case they move. And then the biggest one is when you know your bow's timed good, you actually draw a silver line above and below the cable on the cam. So you can look at the bow from the side and see that if your cable's stretched, because it will eventually, you'll see it out of orientation of those two lines. You do that on the upper one and the bottom one.
Yeah.
Super easy, super simple, works really good. I don't think I forgot anything. Those are the relevant ones.
I don't think so. But basically, the short version of that is once your bow is in a spot that you love it, you just go through and silver Sharpie everything that could move. The one for some reason I'm always paranoid about is like my pin housing, if it ever moved, and then you can get your little scratches on that for your horizontal and your vertical. And that stuff when you're in the backcountry or whatever, I don't know. There's something about. Because what's going to happen, or what often will happen on a hunt, is like you're 5 days into a hunt and you haven't really shot your bow. You might shoot it once a day or whatever, but you're not shooting it like you would in the off season. And your bow sits on your backpack or whatever, and maybe it gets bumped around, or maybe you drop it. And just to be able to look at your bow and be like, okay, everything's good. All right, I feel good. I can confidently make this shot. Because the last thing you want to be doing when you're at full draw on the animal you've waited all year to shoot is wondering if the things are where they should be. You know?
No, it's always good to have that reinforcement in your brain.
Yeah.
Of hey, it's all good. You know, if you feel like there's something wrong with it, it's just you. It's not the gear. Because the more you mark on it, the more you can see where parts would shift or move that they didn't. And
it's definitely a best practice to just have, even if it's a little tiny cube or what are those points that people shoot upland birds with?
Like a small game head?
Yeah, like a small game head that you could shoot into dirt or a stump if you needed to.
Well, depending, like judo point, if that's what you're thinking.
Judo point,
So judo points today don't work very well. The wires on them get bent over really easy because they're shooting so much force. Grim Reaper came out with a new one called the Mace. I want to say, and it's all metal.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna like shoot at a pine cone or something like that to check, that'd probably be what I would buy. I wouldn't use it.
But anyway, if there's something you can bring with you to shoot your bow once a day, just to keep that confidence in you that, hey, my bow is on when you have to make that shot, that stuff's a big deal, because stuff happens when you party with animals. It just does. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's why you're always an advocate of the backup bow too.
Yeah, a second bow is just such a benefit, even if it's a couple years old or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There've been numerous times where I just like, screw it, just give me the other bow, let's go. I don't want to spend time fixing it. And believe me, if anybody could fix it on the fly in the middle of nowhere, it's this guy, and I'd just rather have the other bow. Just hand me the other bow, let's go.
Yeah.
Because I want to hunt, I don't want to fix stuff.
Yeah.
It's the time.
So you're always like an advocate for, don't sell your last bow. Maybe sell the one before, so you keep 2 bows in your rotation.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and granted, they're both depreciating because they depreciate terribly. There's no way around that. But it's just hard not to have this year's bow and last year's bow if you're buying one every year. But if you're buying one every 3 years or something like that, or every 5 years, just get rid of the oldest one. Personally, I know it's not fiscally affordable by any means, but the amount of most of us that hunt, it's our getaway. It's our vacation. It's what we work for all year to be able to go do. And, we work hard. So it's like, is it really that expensive? Is it really that important to not have an excellent second option sitting there ready to go? For me, that's what I would do. Just keep the most 2 current ones. Toss one out.
Yeah, if possible.
Well, and I like doing personally, I like doing a tree stand and a ground blind, or tree stand bow and a running and gunning bow. And then it would validate the emergency bow. So it doesn't have the ideal sight that I would want on it for running around chasing elk in the sticks, as opposed to sitting in a ground blind or that kind of thing. Maybe it's a little shorter than I would ideally want, but it's still very proficient and effective. So I always have a longer and a shorter bow, and I just take them both. And I'm good.
That's kind of the program I'm on this year. Yeah. And it's crazy to say that's an elite and a Darton, because if you would have said like 2 years ago, what are the chances you have an elite and a Darton in your hands? That would have been like, less than 1%.
Hogwash.
Hogwash. Darton, never heard of her.
Phooey. Yeah. Who's that dirty girl?
Yeah. But that bow is 29.5-inch axle.
It's short, man.
Yeah.
It's short.
7.5-inch brace height.
Yep.
Pretty good speed out of that brace height. So I don't know which magic's going on, but yeah, it's kind of my short bow, long bow combo.
It's a really hard bow to beat for a tree stand ground blind, man. It really is. Not to say it's not accurate. It is. It's just, it's short.
The local friends I've had that have bought it to have like their truck beater, basically. Like, I want to have a bow in my truck ready. I can shoot it anytime. Or maybe they're at a job site and they have some downtime. They want to shoot their bow. That's kind of why they bought it. And then a lot of them are like, hey, this thing might end up seeing more reps than I thought it would initially. So just kind of cool. Kind of cool to have a few people that I trust that I've also gotten many arrows through the bow that still haven't broke it down.
Did we acknowledge that bow is going up in price?
You said it was potentially going up $50.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's happening.
Well, that's what they told me. But I want to say I just got an email today.
Yeah.
Since you brought up the Darton, give me a minute to pull up my email real quick. I know I saw something.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting and also kind of confusing why that bow has 7.5 inches of brace height and their flagship bow only has like 6.25.
Announcing the all-new Consequence 2.
Yeah, someone talked about the Consequence 2 having like an additional mod. They said it in my...
As of 9/1, the Darton Consequence 2. Well, here, I can just read this.
Yes.
What is this?
Breaking news.
I just want...
Break the news, Josh.
Breaking news here at Josh and Tim.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give everyone a heads up on the Darton Consequence. As of 7/1, it is the Darton Consequence 2. Our sales this year have blown our forecast expectations out of the water and caused us to move to a new riser to the Consequence 2. We have gone from an extruded CNC riser to a forged CNC riser. This gives us several benefits: strength, rigidity, and an even better look. We have added the Hamskea core integrated rest. That's awesome. And this bow will have 2 mods.
I heard about
one
that.
Standard and one performance that will give you 6 foot a second with little to no compromise in shot and feel. We have added our super popular stone gray riser as an option and have eliminated the earthy camouflage from this bow. So there's no longer a camo bow. Oh, only solid? That's kind of a bummer. Let's see. Same brace height, same axle to axle, same cam, and same great bow. All with the upgrades, this new bow will be $749.99 with the same great dealer margins. This bow is an incredible value at $749.
And it was $649, right?
No, I think these are retail. I'm pretty sure were $699 before.
Yeah.
And then $749 now. All existing programs and back orders will get the Consequence 2 for the original prices. Well, that's good because I still have like 50 or 60 of them on order. Speeds of 325 with the standard mod and 331 with the performance mod. 331 with a 7.5 brace height is incredible. Left-handed models are 8 to 10 weeks out waiting for forging. Sorry, lefties. You's fucked this year.
That's good. That covers it, right?
Hold on. Okay. I'm almost done. We will start shipping Consequence 2s this week. As you sell through your inventory, it's important that you know about the changes in the model. All new riser design, 7075 T6 aluminum BBS dual sync cams, 1/4-inch axles. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so what else did I miss? Does it say it comes with both modules or you have to request one, I wonder? Didn't say that.
Didn't say that, yeah.
So unfortunately, I cannot give you that feedback, folks. Sorry.
That's cool, though. I think at face value, those are good, simple little things that can... I think you were itching earlier, or you said last time that they were hoping to increase the price, and it sounds like good reasons that they can make it a little more expensive, and they're good little thoughtful innovations. Well, I'm glad they didn't redesign it because it's I don't know. It would be really hard to be like, how do we make this thing significantly better? So they just put a couple little thoughtful ways in there that make it better. You know?
Sure.
Yeah.
I can't comment on some part of this, so I'm gonna gloss over it. But I do like that they added the core mount to it. That's cool because then you can put a slap and Everest on there for $200 and a good solid integration, low profile setup.
Yeah,
that's neat. I would have loved to see a pick on the front while they're at it.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer for everybody. I think throw the pick on the front, make it a universal mount, just like rifles.
I do know the core mount option, they don't charge you. You know, like if you put the integrated IMS on the back of an arrow rest or riser for an arrow rest, you have to pay Q80 for everyone you cut. Hamsky doesn't charge. Hamsky's like, hey, feel free to use this little bolt pattern that we designed for this part of an arrow rest for free.
Yeah,
which
for
they
free.
Thought,
you only integrate our rest. Yeah. You just integrate our rest and it's for free.
Yeah. Well, so the funny part is they went at this from what I understand. Now, this is just conversations had not specifically from Hamsky, that they thought, well, if we just make our own thing and have it free to license, the bow manufacturers will jump on it. They've been in legal battles for 2 years or so, or maybe 3 now on that. Yeah. So I probably didn't think it was going to go as easy as it did, but or as hard as it was. But it was a great idea. It's like, we're not going to charge any licensing or any royalties. Anyone can put this on the back of their bow, because that was a unique kind of stab that sucks to me from QAD. They make a good product. They've been around forever. Everybody uses their rest. So many people use their rest. I just hate the fact that they're forcing everybody to cut them a check to cut the riser like that, or not let certain people use that in general. Now, because of their legal issues, and it might be because they told me they went that way because QAD would not license that to them at all. Whereas they're licensing to several different rest manufacturers. They told me that they wouldn't. So I don't know if I'm getting the truth from either side there, but I wish it wasn't such a head-buddy thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if the pick costs money though, but I know the core doesn't. So the pick mount added to that might increase the cost of.
I'm not sure. I can't believe it does. Just based on how many different rifles use it, I think it's just become a standard integration. But I don't know. So. But what I would like to see is every bow have that on the front of it for an integration. It's time tested with rifles. Rifles are beat on when it comes to like how they recoil, how they vibrate, how they reverb,
For
how
sure.
they're trashed on in the field. And if it can work for rifles, I think it can work really well for bows. And I think we've already seen some rate of acceptance. I just would like to see more. I think, why not? I mean, slap that thing on the front. It's a good way. And it also makes it easy to move your whole bracket up and down one notch. You know,
yeah.
which is a problem I ran into with the UV slider. I got to a point at which I couldn't move my UV slider higher.
Right.
And for me to move it higher, I then would have had to like drop up, or I can't remember if it was drop up or down bolt holes and then reorganize the thing. But if I would have to move my pin the last little 32nd inch I needed to, I would have had to effectively move my housing like an inch or maybe an inch and a half. And then I'm recalibrating and then I'm losing slide on the bottom, right? If I do that. So it was just kind of a little bit of a unique circumstance. I'm sure that hasn't happened to many people, but it did happen to me. And if I would have had that integration on the front, I could have said, okay, and now I can just move it up one set of holes if I wasn't already at the top.
Yeah, no, in hindsight, now that it's all out there and all the different options are out there, I kind of wish, which Picatinny was first, because Hoyt did that.
Yeah.
Before anybody else did a front-mounted sight. And I kind of wish that became the accepted, adapted thing, because it does work very well, but, you know, Matthews didn't accept it and did their own version. And now you've got all these different multiple attachment things. And then Bowtech came out with theirs that's different than Matthews, that's different than the Hoyt design originally. And it's just kind of like, God, guys, can we like have something universal, please?
Yeah, can we all agree on something?
Yeah, well, you got to carry so many different sights to try to
that's
fit
the
on
problem.
bows for people.
And
It
then the
sucks.
sight manufacturers have to have different adapters. It's like,
Well, yeah,
it just
they
creates
don't all
more
do that.
It creates more SKUs for everybody, right?
Yeah, and they don't all do that. Like,
Yeah.
there's not. There, I don't know if anybody else has done it, but the only ones so far that have the core mount is Bowtech, is Black Gold, and Black Gold is an affiliate of Bowtech.
Right.
Like, of course they're going to have that, right?
Yeah.
But the first when Matthews first came out, I think it was Excel only that you could get the right dovetail on it. There were a couple that fit in there, but weren't the right fit.
And they're sloppy.
But within 6 months to a year, everybody had readapted what they made, with the exception of Spot Hog. Spot Hog never changed theirs, but theirs fit okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't quite nearly as tight as the Excel. But yeah, if everybody just went with Pick originally, that would have been great. Just simple, durable, works effective. And they already started making sights that way, like that first year. I'm trying to remember who all offered one the first year. There wasn't a ton. But I always have liked how Black Gold tends to adapt their stuff to we'll just make a different bracket and have it be a separate option. So I do like that. They've always made it to where they can kind of fit on just about anything without any major thing. And now that Spot Hog's got that Booney sight out, which it's out, but it's not. You can't find one anywhere. But they made it to where it's easy to interchange from one bracket to another bracket to another bracket.
Which is good.
Well, and it's simple. Like, if you look at their system, honestly, it's probably better than Black Gold's and how simple it is. Black Gold's is still really good, but theirs is just super simple to change from one to another.
I don't think anyone's had any real knocks on Spot Hogs in the past. Other than that, they're friggin' heavy.
They're ridiculously heavy, and they did not have a first axis rail adjustment. And that was a huge knock for me.
Yeah.
We argued about it for years. But the new one does.
Oh.
So, hey,
Josh
same
wins.
team.
Josh wins.
Same team. We're good. Woohoo! Finally win. Josh Johnson, if you're listening, it only took 20 years of fighting with you to get you to do that.
Yeah. Is it impractical, or will we see a hunting site with a micro vertical drive?
Micro vertical drive.
Just like a target site? Clack, 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 up, clack, 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 down.
Well, I would hope your hunting site didn't go clack, clack, clack.
Spin the rod, tick, 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 tick. Just like XL target site.
Well, the problem is it's an audible noise. You don't want an audible noise on a hunting
Not
site.
in the field, but for just you're setting up. You're like, hey, I'm a half an inch off at 20 yards.
Huh. Just try.
I mean, you can, because you're always sliding your tape or sliding your pins, right?
Sure.
Or sliding your wheel.
Sure. There's sites that have that.
Okay. What is it?
Black Gold Pro site. Black Gold Dual Track.
It does have the
it's
micros.
independent.
Yeah.
And it's micro.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're talking the independent head adjustment.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Black Gold.
Yeah.
There's a reason and CBE does it too, but it's not micro.
Okay.
CBEs have an independent head adjustment. It's just set screws, and then you move the whole assembly.
Yeah.
Black Gold, well, I call that a zero stop 20.
Yes.
Now, there's a couple different ways to do a zero stop 20. That's the correct way to do a zero stop
Yeah.
20, is where your head moves independently of your rail. And that's a Black Gold. That is a CBE. And I think the Red Lines do that.
I knew there was a reason I always liked that Black Gold sight so much.
Yeah, it's just, and it's not hard. Like you look at the layout of it and go, well, this is really simple. Why
Right.
don't
It's just
they
a
all do it
drive
this way?
on a rod,
Well,
right?
even if you didn't have a drive, the ability to independently move the head from the body that moves up and down
Right.
is like stupid important.
Yeah.
And it's super easy to do. Even if it was a slide, not a micro, the ability to move that
Yeah.
head, like move the sight all the way to the top, move the head to where you want your urge to start.
Yeah.
Super simple. Like stupid simple. And so the majority of movable sight manufacturers overlook it.
And for hunting, yeah, I agree. And for hunting, why don't you want to be able to, even if you're not looking at your sight, okay, there's a deer coming, crank it all the way to the top. I know I'm at 20.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, the argument that you'll hear is Spot Hog makes a clamp that you put on the rail that stops the movement. So instead of the head moving independent, you can stop the chassis movement before it would end.
But then you're losing slide potential.
Well, yes, but most sights today, the way it's built, you can run the sight into the arrow. If it's got good travel in it,
Sure.
you're going to run the sight into the arrow anyway. So you're not really giving up distance when you do that. Now, so there's that one, and I want to say Excel. I thought Excel had something for that too. I could be wrong. I thought they did. I know they had like at one point in the AccuTouches like bumps that it went into, but you could go past it. But I thought they might have had a clamp or something that stopped. I don't know.
Well, you'd know better than me on
Well,
that.
no, I'm drawing a blank on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know Spot Hog has a clamp that you clamp on the rail that'll stop the sight's movement, which I have played with. But yeah, I mean, I still like. It's funny. Like when it comes to picking a sight and trying to use a sight, I almost always end up back on Black Gold.
Yeah.
And one of the largest things is they've always had a first axis rail adjustment.
Yep.
They've always had an independent scope head adjustment from the rail.
Yep.
Always. Maybe other manufacturers are making a better movement system now. That might be the argument, like a smoother movement, like an UltraView or the Booney. I think it moves pretty smooth. But I've always liked the way it moved. Like I'm super comfortable with it. And the ironic thing, this is what blows me away. It's just like not having a first axis rail adjustment, which the Arxos doesn't have either. But there's been first axis rail adjustment for over 20 years.
I know. It's not like we're talking about something new.
How in the hell are you still not offering that? I don't get it. And Black Gold has also offered a zero stop 20 independent head up and down movement for 20 years.
Yeah.
This isn't like a new damn thing.
Yeah.
This has been around forever. Now, granted, Black Gold started as a fixed pin, 5-pin, 4-pin, 7-pin sight, right? So they had a sight that went up and down and left and right on a fixed body. And then they made, no offense to Black Gold, they're under different ownership at this point. Anyway, they ripped off CBE's original sight design for a movable and then slapped their sight on it, which I guarantee you at one point they bought one, cut it, put it on it, and went, yeah, this works. Let's make this. Just because it was very similar, like the side wheel movement, the Delron to aluminum touching components, like it was very similar. So no offense, guys, but you did. 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. Like so much of this stuff is not that complicated. It's not that hard. I don't understand why so many are slow to adapt. Well, I know movable sights weren't really popular 20 years ago, and now they're really popular now. And it's a lot of what you're seeing today is from fixed pin sight manufacturers that worked their way into movable sights and know their fixed pin mentality. Or like single pin slider manufacturers from 20 plus years ago before we ever shot a long ways away, but just wanted the simplicity of moving one thing, like HHA. HHA was founded on, we just make a single pin slider. We made a single pin slider forever, no first rail adjustment. It was a kind of a knockoff of the Sightmaster back in the day, which was the original single pin slider, was a Sightmaster. plastic thing that and it had like a finger adjustment thing, which was kind of cool, which nobody's managed to do that yet. Somebody figures out how to make a single pin slider that you can adjust it, draw with your finger. Oh, now you're talking about something. Because that existed 30 years ago. Like you could pull it back. It was hokey, but you could pull it back, anchor in, and move your forefinger and see the indicator needle distance for yardage. So if an animal moved, you went, I was at 30. It looks like 36. You could physically move it to 36. And
dang.
It was cool. It was hokey looking, like really hokey looking. Like it was springs and brackets and all kinds of funky shit to make it work, but it worked. If you left it loose, you grab it with your finger and move it back and forth. And I'm like, man, it's a bummer that somebody hasn't like figured that out. I've looked at a lot of different things at how you could make that work today with what we make, and all of it appears like it requires too much force.
Does the Black Gold sight with the micro drive, vertical and horizontal? Does that also have their standard lock system that you just like twist that little black thing?
Yep. Every sight they make that's movable has that standard lock
That's
system.
the only thing that I've seen on Black Golds that I wish could be different. Because I've heard multiple stories of people putting that down and then going to ratchet their movement, which is on the small knob, and stripping it out.
Can I let you know a little secret?
Yes.
That's not what they did. Now, that might have happened once in a while, but the number one is move it to the top and keep going.
Okay.
And rip the teeth out of it. And that's the gripe. So the gripe isn't actually the lock. The gripe is
with the wheel?
Delron to metal for movement.
Yeah.
So they're machined Delron against the wheel that you're moving.
Yeah.
And you can rip the plastic out. Now, granted, lifetime unconditional guarantee. You do that, even though it's your own negligence, they'll still replace it for free.
Yeah.
You got to send it in. They'll rebuild it, send it back to you out pronto.
Yeah.
And for the record, my favorite site, the dual track, is also micro windage, micro elevation, independent vertical, independent horizontal, 2-pin. I wish they'd make it in a 3 because then it would probably be a better seller, but it's still a great selling site. It's just, what do you want it to do that it's not doing? Explain to me what you want that site to do that it won't do.
Well, I would like to see the wheeling of like similar to an Ultra View or similar to a Spot Hog.
Sure.
It is nice and tactile to be able to grab on something that's a little larger, move it to whatever you want it to be. Ultra View's little override system, I don't know if that'll ever strip out, but the ability to actually have it stopped and then wheel it a little bit, because in the field, that could be something that a person does, right? Like, holy shit, there's a deer, crank on it. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't strip out.
Well, I don't ever lock my Black Golds. So.
I don't lock them either.
Yeah, so.
But I've heard stories of people who have, you know.
Yeah, but why are you locking it?
I don't know.
It doesn't move when you fire it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do it.
So you can do the same thing
that
an Ultra View does. So once again, what does it do? What does it not do that you want
Well,
it to do?
I would like a bigger tactile knob.
You want a bigger knob.
Yeah.
Then get Gillingham's $20 knob and put it on
Or they could just make it with a bigger knob. That's kind of nice. I just don't think it's the end all be all. I think, you know, it is really
I got
nice.
ideas.
Yeah.
I got ideas that of how you could improve those things, but
yeah.
I don't know. It's for me it's a bit of a dilemma because I'm at the point in my life where I'm making products, right? And how much do you want to give away good ideas to manufacturers as opposed to just make it yourself?
You gotta pick and choose your battles or whatever.
And I start making like sites, for example, because I think I have some really authentically good ideas of things that don't exist yet that I think I could work out. But then how can I like review sites?
Yeah.
Right? How can I be the non-biased guy on the internet that's just looking at everything, which is the intent. Like I want you guys to feel completely, you know, like you can trust my opinion. And if I start making sites or I start making arrow rests, you know, it's already kind of pushing it with stabilizers, I guess, but I'm not really reviewing stabilizers.
Yeah, stabilizers.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you gonna get poked on for that one? But yeah, you start getting into sites and rests and things like that. You're really pushing your authenticity of non-bias. Chloe, shut up.
Yeah.
Sorry. Freaking dog.
Yeah, they end up being two different pathways and two different things. If you just want to be unbiased and, you know, say you want to be the world's best unbiased product review person, then it's really difficult to vertically integrate things into that market that are your own.
Yeah.
So, but you know, they can have overlap too. And
Yes,
why wouldn't? I mean, we all want innovation.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we want something better out in the market?
I guess I just got to give my ideas away.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't think you're going to be the person bringing to market, let them live and breathe, and maybe some people can latch on, take what they want and build them or whatever. Yeah, good problems to have. Geez, while we're on bow sights, do you have a preference for hunting horizontal or vertical pins?
I really prefer vertical pins.
Yeah,
by a massive amount.
yeah,
It's way easier for me to aim with. It's way more pleasing, and that's part of why I pretty much just use the dual track. I've played with different stuff.
yeah.
Almost everyone's got some kind of a 2-pin vertical,
Mhm.
whether it's movable or not movable. In a perfect world, I would prefer it was 3, because it always looks like one pin, right? So if you stack the pins together like
Right.
like a vertical sight, right, it looks like
Yeah.
one pin with multiple dots on it.
Yep.
And 3 would be a little nicer because it would give you that. Most people's comfortable running and gunning positions are at least 3 pins, right? They want a 20, 30, 40, which personally, people at 20 is stupid if you're running and gunning. If you set a sight at 30, you're 2 yards or 2 inches different at 20, probably on the average person if your sight's set at 30. So just hold a little low and shoot. You don't need a 20-yard pin. But if you had 3, that's 30, 40, 50.
Yeah.
So that means you can shoot out to probably 60 because you can hold off a little bit, right? So you can shoot anything quick impact, 0 to 60 with very little thought without having to move the sight if it got down to it. But having the precision to be able to infinitely adjust to the exact yard on a farther shot or a perfect scenario where you got all the time in the world and you want to wheel and hold the dot, you can. So to me, I really prefer vertical. The horizontal also, your sight picture gets darker sooner. It's cluttering the sight picture. The more stuff you have in the sight picture, the harder it is to see beyond it in low light. When it's one little pin right up at the bottom, it's really easy to aim with.
Well, I don't think I have an opinion yet, one way or the other. I do think the vertical pin ends up being more accurate for long range purposes.
Yep.
But I think the counter argument for the horizontal person, if they're to give it, is typically they like seeing the animal and where their vitals are at. And I can see that. In my recent memory, last year I shot 1 with a vertical pin, 2 with a vertical pin, 1 with a horizontal. And when I did put that horizontal pin on that deer, it was like, oh, there's his vitals. I can clearly see around it. And I thought that was cool. I liked it. So I guess my opinion is not swayed one way or the other yet, although I do think vertical is more accurate for long range.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Have you recently shot one with a horizontal pin?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I
think particularly for a whitetail or something where it's 20, 30, 40 and you can where are vitals and stuff like that.
I think anytime I pick out a sight, it's always got a vertical pin.
Yeah.
I might have a couple of vertical pins, but it's a vertical pin.
Yeah.
I'll say the Ethos has a 3-pin in it, but it's the vertical pin. The Hoyt's got, I think it's got a black gold on it. If I remember right. The Bowtech's got a black gold on it. The Matthews has got an Ultra View with or a Booney with an Ultra View head on it. Yeah. I think everything's got a vertical pin, and I point better with it.
Well, and you've been doing this so long. I mean, you started shooting a bow and there are dinosaurs running around or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you know what you like at this point.
Old man years here, getting up there. Yeah, but it's just I prefer it by a long shot, and it makes me think of a rifle scope with crosshair with the marks across it for a different distance. That's just feels similar to me. So that's just what I like, man. Quirky like that, I guess.
Yeah. God, I was just thinking something about a hunting application. Oh, okay. Let's talk about hunting.
Let's talk about hunting.
Archery does actually lead to hunting, which is ultimately why
it's a gateway drug.
Why we shoot and prepare. Although I think if you were just to do archery just for the point of archery, I think that's cool too. But for most of us, archery does lead to hunting. There's more and more talk on the internet of I hadn't heard this until the last couple of years, and I think Ranch very popularized it, of the talk of shooting at the vital V. Okay? All right. So if I'm to do a good job of describing this, I think what they're describing is the vital V is the intersection of all the major arteries kind of forward towards the heart.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah, the layman would think you're shooting them right in the shoulder.
Yeah, or the crease of the shoulder where that little elbow is or whatever. Shooting them in the heart.
Yep.
Now, for all purposes of you and I talking with each other right now, let's assume we have an animal perfectly broadside, and we're, oh God, do you want to be on the ground or do you want to be in tree stand?
Ideally, I'd be a little elevated, not a lot.
Okay.
You get a lot elevated.
For simplicity, to talk to our audience.
Let's just say on the ground. Okay. Just for simple.
On the ground, 20 yards. We're shooting at an animal.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with a deer, and then let's graduate to elk.
Okay.
You're looking at a deer, 20 yards, horizontal. We're reading his body language, and his body language says this deer is fairly relaxed. He's not on edge. He hasn't heard a crack or a stick. Where would you like to aim at?
Well, I like to tuck the shoulder, but not into the shoulder line where like that V would be.
Mm-hmm.
I've always shot bottom third to halfway up, somewhere in between there.
Mm-hmm.
And I will literally look at the physical mass line that you can see
Mm-hmm.
on where the shoulder blade touches the chest cavity.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the shoulders are straight, not one forward, not one back, but straight.
Which makes a huge difference.
Touch it.
Yeah.
Because I know I can shoot into the right and still hit meat
Mm-hmm.
and not bone, but I'm aiming at the middle of the lungs.
Yeah.
Okay. I understand the concept of the vital V is you're shooting basically at the heart and the conjunction of all
kind
the
of the
veins and
central most where you would create the most blood damage or whatever you'd call it.
So my theory and belief of this,
Yeah.
okay, is if you shoot both lungs, that animal's dead.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm aiming at the lungs.
Yeah.
I'm aiming at the thing that gives me the highest likelihood of killing that animal, dispatching that animal. Because when I aim in the middle of the lungs, which is basically what I'm talking about, I can go, on a deer size, 3 inches forward and 4 inches back
Mm-hmm.
and still hit the lungs.
Yep.
Right? Or if I misgauge the angle he's standing at, which you might be literally the actual physical predator from the movie or whatnot and be perfect, but the reality of that is when that animal looks like it's standing broadside, 9 times out of 10, it is not perfectly broadside.
It's very hard to judge.
It's eighthing to quartering one way or another.
Yep.
And if you think about this lung and you start rotating that body, the movement changes what you're trying to hit.
And it changes the effective amount of forgiveness you have.
Exactly. So I aim for the middle of the lungs in the bottom third.
Yep.
So I'm not aiming in the dead center middle. I'm aiming a little low.
Because this is a deer?
Because every animal tends to drop a little bit when you shoot.
Deer more
They hear
than elk,
something
though.
and they are more likely to clinch up and drop their body a little bit because they heard it. Because in most instances, it's quiet.
Yeah.
So they're going to hear something. But if you hit in the bottom third and they don't move, you still made a great shot.
Still in the lungs, yeah.
But yeah, you're still right in the middle of the lungs. Little low bleeds better. There's nothing wrong with that. So for me, it's the highest likelihood of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you hit the vital V, like the ranch fairy refers to, that animal's going to go a shorter distance. But in my world, the distance difference is 30 to 50 versus 50 to 80.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah, I think this is kind of at the crux, and partially why I might have wanted to bring it up is it's kind of at the crux of where people start to make their arrow decisions. And I think it's very important to talk about because when you shoot at an animal, we want the highest likelihood of recovery. Now, and I don't know that I'm right either, but my experience has always lended me to the same thought as you, is if I'm looking horizontally at his vitals and where his vitals appear to be, I want to shoot at the spot that allows me the most room right, left, and up and down based on that animal's movement.
Correct.
That allows me to harvest that animal cleanly, ethically, and recover it quickly.
Yep.
So that's always kind of been where my head is at. And if I'm shooting at a whitetail that is very calm, I would be just like you. I would aim very similar between a third and halfway up, closer to a third probably, and anticipate that deer is going to drop somewhere between 2 to 5 inches by the time the arrow gets there, which could be more, could be less. But hopefully my arrow's in the best spot to hit a portion of those things. Now, the vital V thing, you basically gave the counter argument to, which is that if you went into the vital V, you're creating the most damage or whatever, but you're also incurring the most risk based on where the bone is around the anatomy. And this is where the heavy arrow person could come in and say, well, that's why I shoot a heavy arrow, so I can get in there. But to me, the problem with that is if you go forward of the vital V, there's hardly anything there.
There's nothing.
So when you're picking an aiming point, I think it makes sense to have the most amount of forgiveness right and left and up and down.
That's the whole point, man.
Yeah.
That's why you shoot them in the middle of the lungs, because it has the greatest
that's how I
likelihood
feel.
of killing the animal. No different than.
Yeah.
That's why you shoot a mechanical broadhead instead of a fixed blade broadhead.
Yeah.
Because you have a higher likelihood of killing and recovering the animal, percentage wise. If you hit something really hard, is it less likely it's going to penetrate and pass through? Yup.
Yeah.
If you hit something bad, you have a way better likelihood of killing and recovering that animal.
Yeah. With
That's
the
the whole
caveat
point.
being to that is that if you have the energy to get through the animal and you're not a low energy shooter or something.
Well, yeah, but if you shoot like a single bevel, 200 grain, 2-blade broadhead, trying to penetrate. Like if you're shooting a Vital V, that's what you're shooting at.
Yeah.
That's what you're shooting with, because you're saying, well, my tool will go through those bones and hold together. And they're not wrong. It will. But what happens when you make a bad shot?
Yeah.
Because none of us are perfect, right? And you miss the major organs.
Mm-hmm.
If you shot a 2-inch 4-blade through that same spot,
Mm-hmm.
you're still probably killing that animal.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're probably not killing that animal. Like that animal's probably going to live.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use whatever you like, and there's no wrong answer. And it's all based off of what makes you feel good, what gives you your warm and fuzzy, what helps you sleep at night.
Yeah.
Okay, but the reality of it, statistically, it is proven mechanical broadheads are more lethal in general. And statistically, it is proven animals move when you fire your bow. So the slower your bow, the slower your arrow, the more likely your impact point is to change.
Mm-hmm.
Aiming at the middle of the lungs gives you a better likelihood of recovery overall, statistically, than the Vital V.
No.
Because you're shrinking what you can aim at.
Yeah.
Right? You're now trying to hit a baseball instead of a basketball.
Mid-sized watermelon.
Yeah. That's reality.
I did say we're going to graduate to elk, and I've shot far less elk. Watched a lot of people shoot elk. The only thing I would change personally if I was aiming at an elk is horizontally, I wouldn't aim as low because I wouldn't anticipate an elk to duck as much. I have seen elk duck before, but it seems more of a rare scenario. And because you have more vertical forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
I'd aim
more in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would too. I don't typically aim low on elk.
Yeah.
No, I'm really referring to deer because you're a much smaller target. I mean, an elk now we're trying to hit a fucking trash can lid.
Yeah.
Like they got big lungs.
And the other thing with an elk, I think this is an important concept you talked about earlier, is where is the elbow orientation?
Yeah.
Well, on an elk, that elbow being forward can really open up a lot of vital areas.
Yeah.
And the elbow tends to be much more harmful as a miss than it would on a deer. So depending on where that elbow is, I don't know how close I would tuck my arrow.
Well, there's another thing too. Yeah, I'll hold off traditionally.
Yeah.
I won't hold on. And part of that is on an elk, if it's shoulders back and you hit it shoulder and go through the chest cavity, now you got multiple sets of hide to shoot through.
Mm-hmm.
And their hide's thick. Like
So
deer,
thick.
deer's like
Yeah.
paper thin. Elk's like walking around with leather plated armor on.
Yeah.
It shocked me the first time I actually cut one open.
Incredibly thick.
A big male.
Yeah.
Like it was amazing how thick their freaking skin was.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no wonder the sharpness of your broadhead matters so much.
It's
Getting
like-
through this is hard.
It's like the thickness of the skin you need to be to do social media on the internet.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you definitely gotta be strong on that
Yeah.
stuff. There's a lot of hate out there, and then the farther forward you go on an elk, the thicker their
Yeah,
hide is.
exactly.
And I don't know if that's them fighting over the years or whatnot. It's like
Yeah.
that darker color
Their
change
mane
gets
is
thicker.
so thick.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So like if you shoot a little farther back, the skin's a lot thinner. It's
Mhm.
easier to get through it.
And particularly if you were to introduce that Vital V idea on elk, I would say, whoa. I would say, you have so much room back in the lungs of an elk.
Mm-hmm.
That idea seems to me far less
I would-
sensible.
I would honestly have a harder time believing that ranch would still tell you to shoot that animal there
Yeah.
if that's the animal you're shooting at.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, 1,000-pound bull elk
Yeah.
still tuck in there and shoot through all that harder tissue.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Can it get through it with the right scenario? Sure,
Yeah.
it can. But there's a lot more ifs.
Yeah.
And I don't like ifs.
Yeah. Now, our friend Brandon made a video recently. Brandon McDonald said, I'm switching back to mechanicals, whatever. He's on your team.
I watched that last night.
There's a clip in there where he shows a bear getting shot. And I talked about this with Brandon on the phone, and I didn't understand exactly where the shot was. But that shot was very forward on a bear.
Yeah.
And it ended up hitting up what seemed to be a ton of bone, and no major arteries wasn't recovered.
Mm-hmm.
But on a bear, bears are deceiving because they have a lot of fur. So their effective vital area ends up being smaller than the eyeball pertains.
I've shot one or two way too low because I looked at the fur and didn't notice where the actual tissue was.
Yeah.
It's very deceiving. So
It can
definitely do not shoot a bear low.
It can be very deceiving, but also on a bear, you have a lot more forgiveness back than forward.
Yeah.
It seems their lungs kind of sit like back.
Yeah.
And I watched my dad shoot a bear, which I thought would have caught the back of the lungs, and it didn't. It punched it flat through the liver, and that bear went 40 yards.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It just hit it square through the liver, and that's how far that bear went. That's only one scenario, but definitely it seems to me that there's a lot more forgiveness back on a bear than forward. So if I was getting to be the armchair quarterback of that shot, I would have said, man, he was probably thinking, I want to tuck it close to that shoulder, and that could have been true, but I think he had 12 to 16 inches of forgiveness back on that shot.
It's deceiving too. Like, I shot a whitetail, 15, 20 years ago that I one lunged because I was tucking the shoulder and it was quartering, and I missed the other lung.
Oh.
Right. So I was more in what you would call your vital V position. And it died. It went like 120, 130 yards and died. But if you're not, once again, not paying perfect attention to how broadside that animal is, and you're tucking that far forward, you may very well have just shot that animal in front of its other lung. Then you really better hope you hit some arteries and stuff, not just the lung.
And I think at the end of the day, you got to make your own choices about what you want to do, where you want to shoot, what you want to use. But as long as you have the information in front of you and you can say, hey, based on what I want to do, here's how I want to do it. That's cool. I just think it's important that you have the information. And yeah, I mean, I really like at this stage just aiming at the spot you have the most forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a whole lot of sense. I get that it's more lethal to shoot them forward, like that they're likely to go a shorter distance.
Yeah,
but it's not that much different on any animal I've shot and got a double lung on. Every once in a while, one might make it 100 yards, but it's pretty rare. If you get both lungs, they're going down, and they're going down less than 100 in almost every application. So to each his own. And when you're shooting a little farther back, it's a lot softer stuff. It's a lot easier to push a bigger mechanical broadhead through there or whatnot, put a bigger hole in something.
It's a lot softer stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
Anyway, our fire just dwindled out. It's crazy. And that's the pod.
She did.
Appreciate you guys. Podcast is doing well. It's awesome. And that's a wrap. Any closers?
We're almost at 400 reviews on Spotify. I think I looked the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 390 something.
Yeah.
So somebody listening new on there, why don't you go throw us a review so we can get over 400?
Yeah,
that'd be neat.
I'll even cut you a deal. If it's your first time, that's free. You know what I mean?
Free time, free.
Yeah. You can come. You can have a feel. Check it out.
We'll charge you on the next one.
First time's free. If it's your second time, what are you doing?
Yeah,
leave us a review.
Give us a review.
Yeah,
for God's sakes.
Yeah, come on.
Woo,
first time's free. Cop a feel. That's fine. That's fine. Feel it out.
See ya.